What's going on, everyone? My name is Adam Allard with PragmaticWays.com, and in today's video, we're going to be going over how we can make this very simple tic-tac-toe game using JavaFX. So a prerequisite to this video is that we need to have JavaFX already installed and imported into Eclipse. So if you don't already have that, check the description below for a link to another video I did on a very easy way on how we can add JavaFX. Otherwise, if you're all ready to go, let's go ahead and jump into the video. In this part here, I'm going to start designing what the interface is actually going to look like. And in order to do that, I'm going to be using a website called apps.diagrams.net. And a link to this will be in the description below. So I'm just going to go ahead and get the rough draft of what the design for the interface is going to look like here. Alright, so this looks like a pretty decent place to start here. So this is what our game's going to look like. Down here is where the actual tile board is going to be. Each tile itself is going to be a square of 100 pixels by 100 pixels. The actual game itself, we can see the whole width of it is going to be 300 pixels, and then the whole height of it is going to be 400 pixels. I have sort of this information center here, where right now it just displays the title. It'll alternate between player X's turn or player O's turn. And then whenever one player wins, it'll probably say something like player X wins, for instance. Player X wins, there we go. And then obviously we have the start new game button to start a new game. This info section here will be a height of 100 pixels, and then the game tile board itself will be a height of 300 pixels. So all these dimensions will be important later on when we actually set up the layout of the game. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's all we really need to know so far to go ahead and get started. So let's jump over to Eclipse and actually spin up this game here. Inside of Eclipse, I'm going to go to File, New Project here. And I'm going to make sure I select a JavaFX project. And I will call it Tic Tac Toe. I will make sure for the JRE I have my JavaFX specific JRE selected. That way it has the VM arguments already on it. And then I will click Next. I'm going to add a user library to the class path here. And this user library is going to be the JavaFX library. And click Finish. If those two steps there, the JRE and this user library with JavaFX, are a little bit confusing for you, then watch one of my previous videos on how I added JavaFX to Eclipse, because setting up new projects just makes it so much easier once you create the user library and a JavaFX specific JRE. But otherwise, if you have your own method, by all means, and I'm just going to go ahead and click Finish now. And then I'm going to get a little bit of red squiggly lines. All I need to do is go into the module info, hover over here, add class path entry. There we go. And now it's all beautiful. And then if we're on a Mac, if we try and run it right now, we'll see that nothing really happens. If you're on a Windows, you can ignore this step, but remember, on a Mac, we need to go to Edit Run Configurations here. And make sure we're on our tic-tac-toe game, go over to the arguments, and uncheck these two boxes right here, because we don't need them. I'll go ahead and click Apply, and now if we click on Play, now we should get our little window here. So now we know we have JavaFX project all properly up and running here, and now we can get started creating our actual tic-tac-toe game. And to start off, I'm going to want a way to keep track of all the different dimensions that we need. So I'm going to create a new constants file here. I'll go over to New Class. I'll call it like User Interface UI Constants. All right, and I will click Finish there. And inside here, there's going to be a couple public integers for the different dimensions here. So I'll say public static final int, and this will be app width. Then we said this is going to be 300. The height was going to be 400. We have sort of our info center as well as our actual game tile board. So this will be info center height. This was going to be a height of 100. Oh, and the height was actually going to, for the app height, that was actually going to be 400. Sorry about that. So then the info center height is going to be 100, and then the game, I'll call it like the tile board, I guess, height, and this was also going to be 300. The width for both of these is just going to be the same width as the actual app height there. So I'll go ahead and save that, and now over in main, I can replace the scene here. Instead of with the 400, I'm going to say UI constants dot app width, and then same thing for the height. Replace that hard-coded 400 with our constants now, and say height. And I don't need the CSS, I can delete that there. And let's just go ahead and run this quick and make sure that it looks a little bit normal here. We have our rectangle shape instead of our square shape. There, that looks good. Next thing I'm going to do is create a couple helper files for initializing the layout here. So I'm going to say init layout here, and I'm going to have to pass in the root border pane. And it's going to make me want to create this method here. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to create a couple more. So I'm going to create one for the actual info center, that little top section there. So I'll say init info center, and again, pass it the root pane. And then another one for the init tile board. And again, we'll pass in that root pane there. I'll go ahead and create both of these. And there we go, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and work on this info center first. So I'm going to put this inside of its own class. So I'm just going to go to new class, and I will call it info center. And this info center is going to have a few fields. It's going to have a private stack pane, and I will just call that pane. We're going to have a label, and I will call that message. And then it's also going to have a button, and I will call it start game button. And let's go ahead and import all these. All three of these are going to be from JavaFX. So import that one, import the label, and then import the button. Now let's go ahead and work on the constructor. I will say private info center. And first, let's go ahead and instantiate a stack pane. So I'll say pane equals new stack pane. I'm going to give it a size, so set min size. And the width of this info center, like I said earlier, is going to be the full width of the application. So that's going to be UI constants dot application width. And for the height, we already specified this inside the constants file as well. This is going to be the info center height. So this is setting the width of it. Now we need to set where it's going to be positioned on our actual application. So to do that, I'm going to say pane.set translate x, and the midpoint of this pane is going to be the midpoint of the application. So I'm going to say application divided by 2. And then same thing for the y position, set translate y. The y position, it was going to be midway point of the midpoint y of this info center is going to be the midpoint of where we want this full info center height to be at. So I'm just going to say that. All right, and that should be it for that one. Let's go ahead and work on the message now. And I'll say message equals new label. And to start off, we can just go ahead and say the label says Tic Tac Toe. All right. For the label, we'll go ahead and set a size for that as well. And we want it to be the full width of it and the full height of it as well. And then let's see what else. We should set the size for the font size. So I'll say set font. And let's make it a little bit bigger. We'll say a font with a size of, let's call 24 maybe. How about that? And then we should also set the alignment. We'll say .set alignment. This accepts a position argument, and we want to give it the center. And let's see, so right now this is going to put it exactly in the middle, but for our design, we actually want the label to be a little bit above the center point. So in order to get something a little bit above, we'll say the Y alignment is going to be, let's give it like -20 pixels here. So we'll say message.set translate Y, and we'll give that about -20. And I think that should be it. Now let's just go ahead and add this to our actual stack pane. So we'll say pane.getChildren.addMessage. And let's go ahead and create our button now. We'll say start game button equals new button. This will say start new game. And then same thing, we're going to go ahead and set the dimensions of the button. So we'll say start game button dot set min size, and we'll say this is like maybe 135 by let's go with like 30 height. And then for the position of where we want this one to be, instead of above about 20, we'll actually go below about 20. So this will be a set translate Y with a +20. That way it'll get it about 20 pixels underneath the midway point. And then again, all we need to do is just say pane.getChildren.add our new start game button. All right, and I think that's about it for the constructor here now. Now let's go ahead and work on a few setters and getters here. And actually, the only getter we really need is for this pane here. We don't need to set the stack pane because it's already done in the info center. We don't need to get either of the button or the label because they're added onto this stack pane. And obviously, the setters are set inside of this constructor. So the only thing we really need here is a getter, and that's just going to be a public. It's going to return a stack pane. It's going to be called get stack pane. And all it's going to do is return our pane here. But then we're also going to need a few other methods as well. For instance, we're going to need a way to update this message, and we're also going to want a way to hide and show this start game button. Because we could imagine once we press the start game button, we're going to want to hide the button during the gameplay, and then once the end of the game, when a player wins or when there's a stalemate, we'll want to show this button again. So let's go ahead and make a few of those. We'll say public void, we'll say update message. This will accept a string called message, and all this is going to do is just going to say message.set text and message. And I'll say this message because the argument name and the actual field name, member name are the same. So we need to specify this message.set text message. Let's go ahead and show and hide the button here. We'll say public void show start button, and this is just going to say start game button dot set visible to true. And then very similar for the hide button, we'll call this hide, except this time we want to set visible to false. All right, and then one more thing we need to do in here is we need a way to sort of specify our start button action. Now, the actual logic of this action handler is going to live inside of the main class, but we need to set it here, essentially. We need a setter for this. So we're going to go ahead and say public void, this will be set start button on action, and this is going to accept an event handler of type action event, and we'll just name this on action. And then all we need to do is say our start game button dot set on action, and we'll just give it the on action. We're gonna have to import these from JavaFX here. So we'll hover over this, and there we go, import event handler from JavaFX. Make sure you're selecting the one specifically from javafx.event. And then same thing with our action event, we need to import this one as well. All right, and that should be it for this info center class here. I will go ahead and press save. We'll go over to main here, and we're going to create a private info center right at the top here. Info center, info center. Inside of our initialize info center method here, I'm going to instantiate this. I'll say info center equals new info center. All right, I will go ahead and add this to our root here. I'll say root.getChildren.add our info center.getStackPane. And let's just go ahead and see what this looks like here. I'm going to go ahead and save, and let's run this right now. Just make sure this looks a little bit normal here. There we go. That's kind of what we're thinking. That looks great so far. Let's go ahead and register an event handler for this action button here, for the start button rather. And in order to do that, we are going to go down here, and I will say this is going to be a private. Let's return the event handler of type action event again. Okay, and this will just be called start new game. All right, let's go ahead and import these real quick. I'll go ahead and hover over here, import from JavaFX, and then again, import from JavaFX. And now we're going to return a new event handler, again, of type action event. All right. And we will go ahead and override the default method here, which needs to be the handle method. So public void handle, this is going to accept an action event. We can call that E. And all this is going to do now, let's just first hide our button. So when this button is pressed, we want to hide this start button here. So we're going to get it from our info center dot hide start button. Okay. Once we start the game, we should probably update the info center message, and instead of saying Tic Tac Toe, we can say it's player X's turn, because usually in Tic Tac Toe, player X starts first. So we'll say info center dot update message, and we'll say it is player X's turn. And then let's just go ahead and print to the console here. We'll say system.out.println, and this will be our actual start game method, whatever that happens to be. We'll say game is starting. All right, and then I need to terminate with the semicolon here. There we go. And I'll go ahead and save this, and let's go ahead and run this now, and just sort of verify that this all works here. So when I press the start game button, oh, you know what I did not do is actually set this now. So now we need to say info center dot set start button on action, and we want to pass it our start game method. There we go. Now when we press the button, it should actually call this method here inside of our main class. So let's check this out now. We'll press start, and there we go. The message got updated to it is now player X's turn. The button is now hidden, and then down here it says game is starting. All right, so that's pretty much all we need to do for our info center class. So now we can start working on the actual tile board. So again, I'm going to create a new class for this. I'm just going to go over here, click on new class, and I will call this a tile board. Let's go ahead and start off with our constructor, public tile board. And now with this tile board, we're actually going to want a reference back to our info center class, because this tile board is going to contain most of the logic for, you know, checking if there's been 3 in a row, handling the switching of players and everything else. So we're going to need some way to relay information back to our info center from this tile board class. So when we instantiate our new tile board class, we're actually going to pass it our info center as well. So I'll say info center, and I will create a private field of this info center up here. And I'll just go ahead and say this dot info center equals our info center. Okay. We're also going to want a stack pane again. So I'll say stack pane, and then down here I will say, and actually these should all be private, by the way. And now let's import this stack pane from JavaFX. And I'll say pane equals a new stack pane. Let's go ahead and set the height and width. I'm going to go ahead and say pane.set min size. And again, this is going to be our UI constants dot app width for the width. And then for the height, it is going to be our constants dot tile board height. And then for the set translate x, we are going to say, again, it's just going to be the app width divided by 2. Put the smack dab in the middle of our application, divided by 2. Let's see, let me put the parentheses there. There we go. And now for the translate y, we're going to want this to be right there again, but we also want this to be after the info center. So I'm going to do tile board height divided by 2 plus the UI constants dot info center height. All right. And then that should be it for our constructor here for now. Let's go ahead and create a getter for our stack pane. So I'm going to say public stack pane, get stack pane. And this is just going to return our stack pane. Pretty simple stuff there. Go ahead and save this now. And now our tile board is going to be consisted of a bunch of different tiles. So I'm going to go ahead and create a private class in here that will hold just an instance of a single tile. So I'll say private tile. Actually, I should say private class called tile. And then we'll give this a constructor. We'll say public tile. This tile itself, again, is going to contain another stack pane. So I'll say private stack pane of a pane. And then in here, we'll go ahead and say this pane equals a new stack pane. As we've noted before, each tile is going to be 100 pixels by 100 pixels. So I'll say pane.set min size. And this will just be 100 by 100. Now with this tile here, we're going to want to create some sort of border on here so we can sort of see like the normal outline that we see whenever we actually see a Tic Tac Toe game. You know, we have these sort of borders here around each of the individual squares. So in order to do that, we're just going to create a rectangle, and I'll call this border equals new rectangle. And let's go ahead and import this from JavaFX again. And we'll just set the min size of this border. Actually, I think we're going to have to set the height and the width explicitly. So we'll say set height, and we'll go with 100. And then same thing, we'll go with border.set width, and this will also be 100. We'll go ahead and set a background. I think let's set fill, and we'll say color.transparent. And then for a border, this will be stroke. And for this, we will just say color.black. And then all we need to do is just add this rectangle border to our tiles stack pane. So I'll say pane.getChildren.add our border. And there we go. Now we're also going to want a label on each individual tile. And the label is either going to be X or an O or blank, depending on the state of each individual tile. So again, I'll just go ahead and here I'll create a label. I'll call it label equals new label. We'll set it to nothing for the time being. And let's import this from JavaFX again. Go ahead and set the alignment of this label. Label.setAlignment, position of center. Go ahead and increase the font size. So I'll say label.setFont, and we'll give it a font with a font size of, let's say, 24. And then all we need to do is just add this label to our pane again. So we'll say pane.getChildren.add label. And go ahead and save that now. And actually we are going to need a way to change this label later on, so we're going to need a way to keep a reference to that. So I'll go up here and make this a private field and delete that type there. There we go. And that's what we want. Now we're going to want a couple getters for these. So let's just go down here and we'll say these are actually going to be public. The first one will return a stack pane. It'll be called get stack pane. And all it's going to do is just return our pane. And then same thing with the label. We'll say public. This time we'll make it return a string though. We'll say string and we'll say get label. And this will just return our label dot get text. There we go. And actually, let's just go ahead and call this a value. Actually, I think value makes more sense. We want the value of whatever our tile is. So either X, O, it's going to be an X, an O, or just blank. And then we're also going to want a way to set this, I believe. So let's go ahead and say public void set value. And this should accept a string, and we'll call this value. And let's go in here and we'll say label.setText and value. There we go. Go ahead and save those there. And then we're also going to need some way of handling a click event on this tile, because whenever someone clicks on one of the tiles, we want it to change to either the value of X or O if that tile is allowed to be selected. So we'll go ahead here and we will say pane dot something with click. Should be like a set on mouse clicked event handler. And we'll go ahead and we'll say event, get our little lambda expression here. And for now, all we're gonna just do is print to the screen here, and we're just gonna say change to X or O if allowed. And we'll end up changing this in a bit once we get a little bit more logic handled inside of our tile board here. Alright, so let's go ahead now and add a bunch of these tiles to our actual tile board. So we'll go to the top of our tile board here, and we'll say private, we'll make a nested array here, and we'll say, maybe I'll call it all tiles. And it's going to equal a new tile array of 3 by 3. And then down here in our constructor, I'm just going to go ahead and say add all tiles. Give myself a little bit of extra additional helper method here. And we'll go ahead and create this private void method. And all we're going to do inside here is do a double for loop here. We're going to say for int row equals 0, row is less than 3, row plus plus. And then for int column equals 0, column is less than 3, column plus plus. And we're going to create a new tile. We'll say tile got get stack pane dot set translate X, and we want our X position for this column to be column times 100 minus 100. And then very similar for the Y translation, we'll say this is Y, except we want this one to be our row. And then all we do here now is we're going to say pane dot get children dot add, and we want to add our tile, but we actually want to add the stack pane from the tile. So we'll say tile dot stack pane. And then we also want to add this new tile to our actual tiles array here. So now we're going to say tiles at row and column equals this new tile that we just added there. And I named this all tiles, not tiles actually. I do like tiles better actually. Let's just go ahead and rename this to tiles. There we go. And I think that looks a little bit better there. Now we're also going to want some way of keeping track of what player's turn it is. So I'll go in here and I'll say private, let's make this a character. And I'll say player turn. We can go ahead and start it off with player X. We're going to want some ways to update this. So we'll go ahead and say public void change player turn. And all we do here is say if player turn is equal to X, well now player turn is going to equal to O. Else we'll say player turn equals X. And now we can actually make use of our info center here. And once we do change player's turn, we're going to want to update that to the message center. So we will say info center dot update message, and we're going to say something like player turn '(s) turn. That way it'll say it's player X's turn or it's player O's turn, so on and so forth. And we'll probably also want a way to get the player's turn. So I'll go ahead and say public, let's say string probably, and we'll say get player turn. And then we'll just return a string dot value of player turn. There we go. And save that again. And now let's add some sort of flag also that's going to indicate if it's the end of the game or not. So we'll say private boolean is end of game. And let's go ahead and set this to false right off the bat here. So now that we have our player turn and our end of game in here, we can go back to our actual tile class here and we can update what happens whenever any individual tile is clicked. So again, whenever a tile is clicked, we want to change it to X and O if we're allowed to, and we're allowed to if there isn't a value in there already. So we'll go ahead and say if label dot get text dot is empty and it's not is end of game, well then we're going to be allowed to update this value. So now we're just going to say, let's see, what do we want to say? We want to say label dot set text. We want to get the player's turn, and then we want to change players. Let's see, what is that called? It's, I think just change player turn. Okay, and then we'll probably want some way to check if an actual winner has, if someone has won or not yet. So we'll say something like check for winner. After each person's turn, we should check to see if that turn won the game or not. So we'll go ahead and create this method up here now. Somewhere back inside of our actual tile board. We could go ahead and put this, how about right down here? We're going to say public void check for winner. And we'll go ahead and say this is a to do for now. And I'll go ahead and save that. And actually we can start implementing this logic now, I believe. We're getting pretty close to the end here. So if we want to check for a winner here, we're going to have to check all the rows. So we'll have to check this row, we'll have to check this row, and then we'll have to check this row. We're going to have to check all the columns. So we would check this column, and then we would check this column, and then we would check this column. And then we should also check the different angles here. So this would be the top right to the bottom left angle. And then we would also want to check the top left to the bottom right angle. And then once we checked all of those, we would also want to check to see if it's a stalemate, meaning that if all the tiles are filled in, but there's no actual winner yet, because we would want to end the game in sort of a tie at that point also. So because there's a lot of different methods here that we need to, or different ways that we need to check for a winner or a stalemate or not, I'm just going to go ahead and create a couple different helper methods for this. So I'm going to say check rows for winner, and then I'll say check columns for winner, and then there should be calls, there we go. And then we're also going to want a check top left to bottom right for winner. Long method name, but it helps get the point across here. And then we want to check top right to bottom left for winner. And then last but not least, we want to do a check stalemate. Maybe check for stalemate. How about that? Okay. And let's go ahead and create all of these now. And we'll say. So now let's start on this check for rows winner method first. So in order to check all the rows here, what we're basically going to do is iterate through each different row one at a time. And all we're going to say is if this cell, or if this tile and this tile are the same, and this tile and this tile are the same, and all three of them are not empty, well, then we found a winner. If not, we would continue on to do the same exact logic for this one, and then same exact logic for this one, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and do that here. We're just going to create a for loop. We'll say for, let's see here, for int row equals 0, row is less than 3, row plus plus. And now we're going to say if tiles at row and column 0, we want to get the text, we want to get the value for that. Okay, if that equals the tiles at row column 1 dot get text, or sorry, get value. Okay. And then we want to say, so if the first one and the second one, or yeah, if the first one and the second one are the same, and the first one and the third one are the same, and the first one's also not empty, tiles at row at 0 dot get value, no, not get stack pane, dot get value dot is empty. This should be a method here. So we should say if it's not empty, rather. Okay. So if all those things are true, then we have presumably found a winner. So we'll probably create another separate helper method for this or something. For right now, we could just say string winner equals tiles at row column 0 dot get value. Okay. I'll probably do some like sort of end game method here. And let's see. Yeah, let's just go ahead and pass in the winner for now. And then let's go ahead and create this end game method. We'll do it after all these different checks here. We'll say private void endgame, pass in our string of winner. And for right now, we'll just say system.out.println. We'll say something like player winner has won. Okay. And of course, again, we'll end up changing that in a minute here. This is just sort of a little placeholder right now. And then if we did find a winner, back inside our check rows for winners method, we'll just go ahead and return here. You know, save this sort of processing. All right. Let's go ahead and implement sort of the same logic for our check columns for winner here. Instead of int row, I'm going to change this to column. So I'm going to go ahead and right click, refactor, rename, and just change it to column. There we go. Pretty much similar logic here. Instead of the row at the first column, we're going to say the first row of iterating through all the columns. And then make sure that equals the second row while iterating through the columns. And then same thing, we want the first row while iterating through the columns, and verify that against the third row while going against all the columns. And make sure that first row with the column is not empty. And then that winner is going to be, again, the first row of the column. And same thing. All right, and I'll go ahead and save that quick. Now we can move on to the diagonal checks now. And it's actually going to be pretty similar again. We'll just go over here and create another for loop. And actually, I don't think we're going to create a for loop. First, let's say if it's not the end of game. If not is end of game. Okay. And actually, we probably should wrap this one in a not is end of game too. And the reason I should do this is because back inside here, if we check for a winner, well, check rows is going to happen first. And then inside of this end, if we did find a winner within one of the rows, well, then we really don't care about checking all the rest of these. So the way that could happen is inside of our end game method, for instance, we'll probably say is end of game equals true. Okay, so at any point after this one, if any of these are true, well, then we don't even want to do the processing. So we'll just kind of cut out right before we do any of that even. A little bit of tiny optimization there. So if not is end of game, we'll then do all of this logic here. I will control X and then control V to cut and paste. And then same thing. I'm just going to make sure any of the logic in between these are just going to be inside of there. Okay. So now to actually implement the logic for this diagonal here. So if it's not the end of game, now let's go ahead and check each of the actual tiles individually. We'll check this one and this one and this one. So make sure these are the same and then make sure these are the same. So all we need to do for this is just say if tiles at 0, 0 dot get value dot equals tiles at 1, 1 dot get value, and we'll say let's see, where's my parentheses here? There we go. And let's check 0, 0 against 2, 2. Okay. And we also want to make sure that 0, 0 is not empty. So not tiles at 0, 0 dot get value dot is empty. So if all of those are true, well, then we found a winner for this diagonal here. So we can just go ahead and do very similar logic to right here. And we'll just say a winner at our first reference point here is 0, 0, and then end our game. And then again, I'm just going to go ahead and save to auto format here. And I can pretty much just copy and paste this same exact logic here for the check top right to the bottom left now. But instead we're going to go sort of backwards here. So we're going to say instead of 0, 0, we're going to check, so instead of checking 0, 0, we're going to check 0, 2, 1, 1, and 2, 0 instead. So I'll say 0, 2, make sure that it equals 1, 1, and then make sure again 0, 2 equals 2, 0, and then make sure that 0, 2 is not empty. And then if all that is true, then we'll say the winner at 0, 2, or the tile at 0, 2 is going to be our winner, and we can end our game there. Okay. So we can move on to the check for stalemate method now. And again, this is just going to verify that essentially all the tiles have been filled up and we haven't yet found a winner. So realistically now, the only way we can get into this method is if there hasn't been a winner, right? Because if any of these ones have found a winner, well then we would end up saying that there was a winner there. So we can safely just go ahead and assume that we haven't found a winner, and if we haven't found a winner but all the tiles are filled up, well then then the game is stalemate. So we're going to say if it is not the end of the game, And then we'll go ahead and do our double for loop again. For int row equals 0, row is less than 3, row plus plus. For int column equals 0, column is less than 3, column plus plus. And just verify that it is not empty. So if tiles at row at column dot get value dot is empty. So this time, if this value is empty, then we're just going to go ahead and return out of this method here. And we don't want to finish the rest of this method, because essentially we want to verify that these all are not empty. So if any one of them is empty, then we don't want to finish this, this method here. Because if we get through all of the tiles here, well then at the bottom outside of here, what we want to say is we would probably end the game. So we'll say is end of game equals true. We should probably update the info center. So we'll say info center dot update message. And we could say stalemate, something like that. And then we should probably just show the start button again. We'll say info center dot show start button, because it's the end of the game and we should allow them to restart the game and then start a new game rather. So show start button again. And I think that's all we need for our stalemate method. And then let's see, what else do we need? Yeah, let's go ahead and implement this actual end game method here. So really, I think all we need to do is we already set the end of game to true. We should print to the info center, kind of like what we did for our stalemate right here. Actually, we pretty much just copy and paste this right here, as a matter of fact. Go ahead and replace our testing outline there with that. And instead of saying stalemate, we should say player, we'll say winner wins. All right, and go ahead and save that there. So let's go ahead and actually test this out, because this should be most of the logic that we need now. And no, it is not, because I didn't actually go back into our main board and add our tile board here. So when we create a new tile board, all we need to do we have a reference to our tile board? No, we do not. So let's go over here at the top and we'll say tile board, and then down in our init tile board method, we're just going to say tile board equals new tile board, passing it our info center. And then let's go ahead and now just add this tile board to our root border pane. So we'll say root dot get children dot add our tile board dot get stack pane. And now let's save this and try and rerun this again here and see what this looks like. Now let's see what this looks like. Start a new game and make sure X wins right away. Start a new game. Alright, so we are going to need some sort of start new game method to sort of reset the board as well. But for the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and close that out and manually restart the game. Alright, let's make it so player O wins this time. There we go, player O wins. So I think that all works great there. So now we can work on the logic where when we press start new game, it resets the board for us. So to do that, I'm going to go inside of our tile board class here. And probably somewhere near the top, I'm going to create a start new game method. I'm just going to say public void start new game. And then first off, I'm just going to say is end of game is going to equal false, because we are starting a brand new game. I'll go ahead and reset player turn back to X. And now let's clear out all the tiles. So I could probably do the double for loop again. I'm just going to copy what we have and add all tiles. But instead of creating new tiles, I'm just going to reset all their values to a blank empty string. So I'm just going to say tiles at 0, 0 dot set value And we'll just say blank string. And actually, should it be set value? No, it should not. It should be get value dot, or maybe it is set value. Do we have a set value? Let me go to the tile class. I forgot what we have here. Yes, it is set value. Okay. So yes, this should be dot set value. There we go. And let's just change this to an empty string there. And that should be all we need for that. And now we just need to go back into our main class here. And whenever our start new game button is clicked, we can go ahead and delete this print line now and just say tileboard dot start new game. And I'll go ahead and save that. And I think that should be pretty much it. Let's go ahead and run this application again here. And we'll see what this sort of looks like here. I'll start a new game. I'll make it so player X wins right away. Player X wins, start new game. And oh, you know what I did do? Let me go back into the tile board here. And yep, that's exactly what I did. I said 0, 0. This should be row and column instead. That was silly. Let me go ahead and save that and rerun the application here. Let's try that again. Make sure player X wins, start new game. There we go. Now it resets everything. Let's make it so player O wins this time. And there we go. Player O wins. We'll start new game again. And then one more time, player X wins diagonally. All right, perfect. Actually, I think the last thing we should do now is get sort of that winning line, that strike through once a player has won. And actually, let me also just check stalemate here. Let's see if stalemate. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I want to get it so a stalemate occurs. Okay. And we'll say X goes there, and O can go there, and X goes there. Perfect. And there we go. Stalemate. No one has won. All right, perfect. So yeah, let's go ahead and get, when someone does win now, we'll sort of get that strike through line going. So first thing I'm going to do for this is back inside the tile board, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new thing for the board here. I'm going to say a private line, I'll call it winning line. And I'll have to import this from JavaFX. There we go. And then in our constructor here, I will just say winning line equals a new line. And we'll go ahead and add this to the pane. Pane dot get children dot add our winning line. There we go. Oops. There we go. That's what we want here. All right. I don't really want the line to be showing during the gameplay. So when we start a new game, I'm just going to go ahead and say winning line dot set visible to false. And then when we end the game, I'm going to want to set the winning line to true. So now let's find our end of game method here, end of game. And we'll say winning line dot set visible is true. Okay. And then when we end the game, we should also actually draw our line now, because our line is either going to be down this column, or down this column, or this row, or this diagonal, so on and so forth. So I should create a separate helper method for that, just clean things up a little bit. I'll say private void draw winning line. Okay. And then I think this set visible could actually be put inside of here. And we'll put it at the end of our draw winning line method. And then from our endgame method, we will just call this draw winning line method, whatever it's going to do. So let's go ahead and work on that logic now. So in order to be able to draw the winning line, we're going to need a way to know what tiles to draw over, or what tiles are the winning tiles essentially. So I'm going to create another little helper class here. I'm going to say a private class, we'll call this winning tiles. And we'll just make this pretty simple here. We'll say this is going to be a tile start, tile middle, and tile end. And then we'll make a constructor here, public winning tiles, passing it a tile of a start, middle, and end, and we'll say this start equals start, this middle equals middle, and this end equals end. And these all need to be tiles as well. There we go. Add the data type in there. All right. And now from each of our winning classes, or each of our winning methods here, and I'll start with the check rows for winner, I want to pass the set of winning tiles to this endgame method. So in this case, it's going to be, let's see, we're checking for the rows here. So we're going to say our first winning tile, our start winning tile, is going to be tiles at row column 0. And then same thing, it'll be, I'll paste that a couple times, and now I'll change this to column 1, and then change this to column 2. Because I need to put a new winning tiles in here. There we go. And this is complaining that I haven't implemented that yet, so let's go ahead and change that now. And we'll say end game, and this will accept a winning tiles object called winning tiles. And we won't do anything with that yet, but now we need to go and fix all the rest of these down here. And now we'll say a new winning tiles again, and this time it's going to be our tiles of, let's see, this is now going to be row 0 with our column, and then same thing, we'll say row 2, or row 1 and then row 2 rather. Row 1 and row 2, delete that comma there. And then for down here, for our top left to our bottom right, it's going to be new winning tiles, where our start is our tiles at 0, 0. Our middle is tiles at 1, 1. And our end is tiles at 2, 2. There we go. And pretty similar for our top right to our bottom left, except this will be 0, 2. It'll stay 1, 1, and then this will be 2 and 0. And let's see, there we go. Okay. And now for drawing the line, we should pass in our winning tiles here. And I will just copy this and paste it down into here, so Eclipse stops complaining. Alright, now we can actually start drawing the actual line now. So in order to do that, we're going to need to translate a couple of the different start and ending points of this line here. So I'm going to say winning line dot set start x, and the start of this x is going to be our winning tiles dot start. We want to get the stack pane for that, and now we want to get the translate x of the stack pane, so get translate x. It's going to be very similar for the start y. We'll just change all these x's to our y's here. Okay, and then going to be pretty similar for our ending. We're just going to do almost the same thing. Change these starts to end. Change this start to an end. And I think that's all we need there. And then we also need to set the line itself as actual translate x and y. So we'll say winning line dot set translate x. And now this is going to be sort of the midpoint. So we're going to say winning tiles dot middle. Again, get our stack pane, and get translate x again. And then same thing for our y. All we need to do is just copy and paste that, change this to a Y, and change this to a Y. And I'll go ahead and save that. And let's run this, because I think our application should be just about done now. So we'll start a new game. And let's make it so X wins. And we did not draw the line. And I bet you I didn't actually add it to, let's see here. This also, that's why. This was start, this was supposed to be end. So let me try and save that, and let's rerun it here. Let's just get X to win right away. There we go. And we'll start a new game. Let's make X win in the middle. All right, now let's make O win at the end here. All right, let's check our columns. Or our rows, sorry, we just checked our columns. Let's check our rows now. We'll let O win in the middle here. We'll let O win at the bottom. And now we'll go with our diagonals. We'll let X win over here. And we'll let O win over here. Perfect. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, hope you guys liked this tutorial on how to make Tic Tac Toe in JavaFX. If you did, please smash that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel grow. Please subscribe so you can get notified when I come out with other JavaFX games or other applications, so on and so forth, helping us all get better at JavaFX and just creating other applications. So until next time, everyone, happy coding.